Hello and welcome back to the fourth episode of the Couch Crickets. My name is Carl and with me in studio, as usual, is Chris. How's it, Chris? How are you?
Good to be back. Excited for another week.
Okay, so we're going to start off this episode by addressing the elephant in the room.
I'd say the goat in the room, but probably debatable.
So, AB de Villiers.
Yeah, after the South Africa's third loss
against India, yeah. That's basically where we left our listeners after our previous episode.
Yeah, some information came to light that, according to reports and what has been confirmed by Cricket South Africa, is that AB de Villiers made himself available to play in the World Cup 24 hours prior to the squad being announced, after apparently being given the chance to express his wishes to be part of the team.
Yeah, that's rough, man. As if the Proteas weren't having a hard enough time already. Now there's a little bit of a media bombshell overshadowing everything.
So just by the way of background, AB de Villiers retired from all forms of international cricket in May
2018.
2018. So he's been out of the game for a while. South Africa's been moving on, building a team without him.
And Otis Gibson actually, during his interview, he made a very valid comment saying that since AB de Villiers has retired, they've won all of their ODI series. And now suddenly they lose 3 games in the World Cup and suddenly everyone's, on their case and AB should be in the team and AB is the savior, etc., etc., etc. So that's a bit rough on the Proteas team, but what a bombshell. I'm pretty disappointed in whoever leaked the information. Let's just start off there. I feel it could have been kept until after their campaign, or you know what, for all practical reasons, it just could have been kept a secret. I don't feel it's relevant information. Nothing good can come of that information being leaked. It's typical media sensation.
I totally agree. I think Cricket South Africa did absolutely the right thing. There are people on social media saying that they should have picked AB de Villiers. He would have made a huge difference. Obviously, a player of AB de Villiers' caliber will make a difference to any team. For those who are not aware, AB de Villiers is probably one of the best one-day international batsmen of all time. There's very few players that boast an average above 50 and a strike rate above 100. And he has a special ability to dominate teams, which very few other players have been able to exhibit.
And included in that is an unbelievable entertainment factor. He's known fondly around the world as Mr. 360, referring to his ability to play shots literally in a 360 degrees radius.
So while he has got this reputation and he would definitely have made a difference, South Africa's moved on, and for him to now make a comeback into the team would be very unfair to players who've put up their hands and claimed spots in the team in this build-up to the World Cup.
And very disruptive of team culture and team roles that's been forming over the past year. But just to get back a bit, AB de Villiers retired because he said he was running out of gas and he wanted to spend more time with his family. Now, I feel that's quite a valid reason. But I think a lot of the criticism towards him has come from the fact that even after stating these reasons, he's been playing a heck of a lot of international T20 competitions. He played in the Pakistani Super League, he played in the IPL, he played in the Mzansi Super League, and so forth. Otis Gibson also revealed in his interview that he spoke to AB de Villiers in December at an Mzansi Super League game, asking him whether he's still happy, whether he's done. In his own words, he said, "Are you done with this retirement nonsense?" And AB actually reiterated and said, no, he's happy with his decision. And Cricket South Africa also stated that they made AB aware that if he would be interested in returning for the World Cup, he must play in the first 2 ODI series that were played in this year against Sri Lanka and Pakistan to be eligible for the World Cup.
Yeah, I understand the controversy, but I want to come up for AB de Villiers here. I think as a professional sportsman, your career has an expiry date, and you do have to take your family into consideration. And for AB, the way to make money and maximize his time with his family is to play in these leagues that have got the paychecks. And It's not the patriotic thing to do, but AB de Villiers has served his country in terms of playing cricket for a long time already. Realistically, he needs to make use of his talent to make himself money. I'm sure there's other ways that AB de Villiers can make money, but it's also the way in which he can maximize his time at home with his family and still make money.
Maybe he could make a bit of extra money launching his singing career. For those of you that haven't seen it, he does have a singer out on YouTube. Go check it out.
So it's not noble in inverted commas, but
in the traditional sense.
In the traditional sense, but I'm sure his family appreciates it, and putting family first is a noble thing. And then my second point in coming up for him is just, I think the temptation is so high for South African cricketers especially to want to play that extra World Cup because it's the cherry on the cake of their careers that they could never achieve.
It's the unicorn.
It's the unicorn, it's the Yeti, it's the whatever, it's the Loch Ness Monster, it's the elusive, whatever you want to call it, that South African cricketers have not been able to achieve. And I think to be part of a South African World Cup victory would be an absolute highlight in any South African cricketer, any cricketer's career, but especially a South African cricketer's career. So I understand that there was a lot of temptation for him to want to play in this World Cup.
I think at the end of the day, I'm just really disappointed at how the situation played out. I think if AB could have just decided a bit earlier and said, listen, yeah, I want to play the World Cup, let's see how we can make that happen, then that would have been a very good thing for South African cricket. But that's that. He's not there. Let's move on, take a look at what's actually happening in the World Cup. But before we do that, the most exciting part of this week's show, the winner
draw.
of the lucky draw. So last week we opened up a competition. We're going to give away 2 3-in-1 South African supported jerseys. Now 3-in-1 meaning that the jerseys got elements of soccer, cricket and rugby in. And it's quite a very sort of nice all-round jersey to wear to any South African sport occasion. So, the entries were done on social media. I'm not going to bore you with the details of that. We're going to do the lucky draw now. So,
Let's do it.
Chris is going to do the lucky draw for us.
Okay, we're putting these sounds in so that you can hear that it's a real
It's a real legit random draw.
random draw. I'm looking away. I'm sure you can hear that. And then I'm digging in the pile of names. And out comes Shantae.
Yeah, Shantae Lawrence, I think. Yeah, that's Shantae. That's the winner of the first shirt. We've got 2 to give away.
Okay, round 2. Drum roll. And we have, let's unfold it, Marius.
Oh, Marius Roos. Lekker Marius.
Congrats to those 2.
Congrats to those 2. So,
I'm a bit jealous. I saw the jerseys for the first time this evening, and I think they're quite nice. So
yeah, we'll have to see if we can organize ourselves some of those jerseys. But alas, so well done to Shantae and Marius. Please slide into our DMs so that we can organize the delivery of your jerseys. And I hope you'll enjoy them. Just on the giveaway note, we've got some exciting things upcoming from next week.
Oh.
So keep an ear out for that.
Good stuff.
We'll be communicating on social media and also on next week's episode.
Right.
So
Down to business.
Yeah, the World Cup.
Yeah.
What happened, Chris? So we left off with India beating South Africa. Fairly convincing, but not that convincing. But that's in the past. What's happened?
Straight on, that was the 8th game of the World Cup. The 9th game of the World Cup was Bangladesh against New Zealand. An interesting game. New Zealand, it looks like it was a close game because they only got the runs in the 48th over.
With 2 wickets
with
remaining.
2 wickets in hand. But it didn't ever look like Bangladesh were going to win that game. I think actually New Zealand looked quite comfortable in general.
Just a note, Bangladesh putting up 244. I feel that's a pretty decent effort in terms of batting, considering New Zealand have got a quality seam bowling attack.
Definitely, and it was really good for me to see my second team, New Zealand, doing so well, with my boys Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor scoring runs again. They're looking like a really solid middle order there.
But all in all, that game was their second victory. In this week, we'll get to, they also achieved their third victory. So New Zealand looking really solid, clinical performances, and contributions from different people all around. There's not one person carrying the team, so they're looking like a real dangerous unit at the moment.
Yeah, one person, I think I've mentioned it before in a previous episode, but Shakib Al Hassan has always been a bit of a dark horse for me at the top of the all-rounder rankings. But in this World Cup, he's proving his worth. He's scoring runs at number 3 for Bangladesh, where he usually used to bat down the order.
I think he got a 64 against New Zealand.
Yep, and then took wickets as well, taking 2 for 47 in his 10 overs. So
that's pretty good.
Quality with both bat and ball from Shakib.
And he actually scored 100 a couple of games later against England as well, but we'll get to that in a moment. We then move on to the 10th match.
What a game.
Australia-Indies.
Yeah. Controversy, close game, personalities, very interesting.
Australia ending, well, we'll just get to the summary. Australia won by 15 runs, but it wasn't that simple. Australia setting up a score of 288, but they were 79 for 5 at one stage.
Yeah, very stressful start. Australia, the memes were flying on all the Australian cricket social media accounts. Australia looked like they were going to get a hiding, and then Stephen Smith out from the wilderness and rebuilds the innings.
Solid as a rock.
Just a really quality innings. If you look at 73 from 103, which is what he ended up with, it doesn't look like a special innings, but under circumstances, rebuilt the innings. Looked really good for a 73. And then they got the punch at the end.
The dark horse, Nathan Coulter-Nile. So just out of interest's sake, if you go look at Nathan Coulter-Nile's ESPN Cricket Info profile, he's not even classified as an all-rounder.
Which isn't really fair if you look at his 92 of 60 balls. And together with Alex Carey, who scored 45 or 55, they really gave the innings the impetus they needed at the end of the innings. And to consider that lots of people in Australia were calling for Matthew Wade to get the wicketkeeper role instead of Carey, and Nathan Coulter-Nile to be
replaced by Josh Hazelwood.
Who bowled really well in the previous World Cup. The selectors are probably giving themselves a real pat on the back.
Yeah. So, I mean, the tournament is long, but that was 2 really quality performances with the bat, especially given that Nathan Coulter-Nile in this tournament, he has had some problems with the ball. He's also bowled some quality spells, but he has had some problems with the ball. So I think that really would have settled his nerves and sort of just got him into it.
So having had Australia post a competitive total, the West Indies came into bat with the universe boss, Chris Gayle, opening the innings.
The self-proclaimed universe boss.
He looked a bit awkward as he usually does at the start and then hit a few mighty blows. And then came the interesting turn of events. He was given out caught behind, which he immediately reviewed and showed that the ball had actually nicked his off stump and not his bat. He was then given out LBW, which he again reviewed and was showed to be going down the leg side. So he survived again and was given out a third time, which was reviewed, which then showed umpire's call.
Meaning he's out.
He was out, but it could be said that it's a borderline call. Now, what made that dismissal even more controversial was that we got the replay moments later of the ball preceding the ball that got Chris Gayle out. And it was a huge no ball from Mitchell Starc.
Meaning that the wicket delivery would have actually been a free hit. So he would not have been able to be given out LBW. And that could have potentially changed the game. I mean, I think he went out for 21 and give Chris Gayle 5 or 10 overs at the crease, and Australia might have lost that game quite convincingly. But that's all water under the bridge. He was given out, nothing we can do about it, and that was followed by a quality innings by their wicketkeeper Shea Hope. If you look at it, it was quite a slow innings. He was only going at a strike rate of 66, but it was what the situation required. Just a bit of stabilisation. And to be honest, they went on really well with Nicholas Puran and Hetmeyer. But I was just a bit disappointed because they were in a situation where they could potentially have easily won the game. But it seems like they just lost the plot a bit and couldn't exit the T20 mode. Guys were playing shots that were not necessary.
Yeah, I think fingers will be pointed at Andre Russell and Carlos Brathwaite especially, inverted commas T20 specialists who couldn't come out of T20 mode and rotate the strike a little bit. But kudos to Jason Holder, who batted really well.
Yeah, he's starting to... Well, no, he's not starting. He has matured into a top-quality all-rounder. And a seemingly great captain as well, with his sort of calm, lead by example.
Definitely. I think he's got some challenging personalities to gel together in that team.
Yeah.
Some very strong personalities with the universe boss and Andre Russell and a few very strong characters there. And I think to be the leader of that team requires a lot of self-confidence. But Jason Holder, for me, along with Shakib Al Hassan and Ben Stokes, probably one of the better all-rounders in the world at the moment.
Definitely, yeah. So that ended with Australia winning by 15 runs. As we said, West Indies, in my opinion, throwing it away a bit. But also give credit where credit is due. Australia set up some nice plans for those T20 specialists, playing to their weaknesses, knowing that they most likely will not be able to resist, bringing some fielders up into the ring, sort of tempting them to go for the big shot, and it paid off for them. They got a couple of boundaries, eventually lost their wickets. So moving on then to Pakistan versus Sri Lanka.
Yeah, not too much to say. Rained out.
Match abandoned without a ball. Typical England.
Yeah, I saw some comments today that people are calling for roofs to be built on top of cricket grounds these days.
So interestingly enough, I saw today that the roof at Wimbledon only cost about 80 to 100 million pounds. I say only, but so some of the comments I was reading today say that England should consider not hosting their brand new format, the 100 tournament, which is a cricket tournament that they'll host. You can go Google for details. We don't have time to discuss all that. But the tournament will cost English cricket 200 million pounds.
Get wrecked.
So some people were saying they should leave that and just pick 2 stadiums and build 2 roofs. But I think cricket stadium roofs might be a bit more expensive. But they do actually have stadiums in Australia where they've played under roofs and things like that.
That'll be, that's maybe somewhere to go, especially in places like England where the rain is always a problem, and in Durban.
But anyway, so Pakistan, Sri Lanka rained out. I think Pakistan will be pretty disappointed in that, because that was probably a pretty surefire 2 points for them, because Sri Lanka has been pretty poor so far.
Yeah. Game 12, England versus Bangladesh. I think with Bangladesh beating South Africa, England might have been nervous going in, but if they were
wary of the Bangladeshis.
If they were, they didn't show it.
Putting up a massive 386. My boy Jason Roy scoring 152. Quality innings, and supported ably by a whole host of players down the order. As usual, Josh Butler cashing in with a 64 at a strike rate of 145. It's a really high total. No one thought that the Bangladeshis would get anywhere near it. But they put up quite a good effort, huh?
I feel their chase was far from embarrassing. We've mentioned him before, but Shakib Al Hassan played a classy 121 off 119 balls. Unfortunately, didn't get the support that you'd want in such a big chase. But again, England's bowling looks quite classy. Jofra Archer.
The fiery Jofra Archer.
3 wickets at an economy of 3.28. And Ben Stokes.
Ben Jokes.
Contributing with 3 wickets, also at an economy of 3.8.
Just by the way, if you still haven't seen his catch that he took against South Africa in the opening game, go check it out on YouTube.
Just Google Ben Stokes' greatest catch. And then while you're at it, Google Cottrell greatest catch, West Indies versus Australia.
Yeah, that was also a sublime catch.
Next level. Plucking apples. Anyway, England comfortably winning that game.
By 106 runs. Pretty good performance from them, I feel, all around. They seem to have their campaign back and running after that loss against Pakistan. Then Afghanistan played your second team.
Yep,
New Zealand. And New Zealand sort of walked to a relatively comfortable victory, bowling Afghanistan out for 172 and scoring 173 for 3 after 32. Yeah, pretty clinical, if you ask me.
Very impressed with New Zealand's inverted commas second string bowlers. Mm-hmm. We always think Trent Bolt and Matt Henry are going to take wickets up front. They bowled well, but they didn't take any wickets, and it was Lockie Ferguson and Jimmy Neesham who took 4 wickets and 5 wickets respectively.
Jimmy Neesham's first 5-wicket haul, actually.
With the New Zealand team losing an early wicket up front, it would have been a little bit nervous in the change room, maybe chasing a low total, maybe some nerves, but
The ever calm Kane Williamson.
Kane Williamson and again Ross Taylor scoring some runs, which is very encouraging for New Zealand. I think, like the Smith-Warner situation for Australia, if Williamson and Taylor are making runs, New Zealand are probably winning games.
Yeah. Speaking about Smith and Warner, let's move on to my favourite game of the week, India versus Australia. So firstly, India batted first and they set up a total of 352 for 5. And I thought that was an absolute masterclass in how to pace your innings and build a big innings in one-day cricket. With the rise of T20 cricket, we tend to forget just how long a time 50 overs actually is. You can't go at 10 and over for 50 overs. It's simply not possible. So just seeing how India, in particularly Shikhar Dhawan, Rohit Sharma in the start, went about their business going at 4.5, 5 and then accelerating to 5.5, and then eventually Rohit Sharma went and Virat Kohli came in and they accelerated the run rate all the way through incrementally, starting off slowly and building that innings, eventually sort of finishing off with that magnificent cameo from Pandya and also Mahendra Singh Dhoni, the finisher, popping in with a little 27 or 40. That was an absolute masterclass in my opinion. Surprisingly though, Australia's bowlers struggled a bit, and in particularly Adam Zampa.
Yeah, I think to start off with, the seam bowlers didn't take wickets up front.
They did bowl very economically though.
Yeah, so that I think is something that a lot of teams have shot themselves in the foot. There's an urgency to get runs in the power play when there's only a few fielders allowed outside the ring, and that leads to teams losing wickets in the first 10 overs. And you're not going to score 360, 370 if you lose early wickets.
Yeah.
You've got to keep the wickets in hand, and I think that's what India did. Dhawan and Sharma put up a solid partnership up front. Kohli consolidated when he came in before trying to accelerate. He was going just under a run a ball for most of his innings until he accelerated towards the end. And again showed us how classy he is, being able to rotate the strike no matter how good the ball was. He just manoeuvres the ball into the gaps. And leaving the big hitting mostly to Pandya and Dhoni. He was sort of the supporting role throughout that innings.
He kept to his role very nicely. When he came in, he realised that it's now time to tick over the scoreboard and keep that run rate going. When they sent in Pandya for some big hitting, he didn't try to imitate Pandya. He just kept rotating the strike to get Pandya on strike so that he can do the big hitting. And that's a very, very good example of how to identify your role and execute your role.
As you were saying, Adam Zampa, a bit disappointing. I don't think it was his best bowling performance, but again, we see spinners from South Africa and Australia coming up against the Indian batting lineup and not looking dangerous at all. You've got to ask yourself, because in the same game, the Indian spinners look deadly. So you've got to ask yourself, are the Indian spinners that much better, or are the Indian batsmen that much better at playing spin?
So I think it's probably a case of the Indian spinners tend to be a bit better, in my opinion. So I'll tell you why I think so. Both the Indian spinners in this particular game identified early on that they are not receiving a lot of help from the surface. There wasn't a particularly large amount of turn, or, it wasn't slow or fast. So what they did was they created natural variation with the speeds at which they bowled. They were bowling deliveries ranging from 76 k's an hour, which is super slow, up to 90 k's an hour, which is quite fast. They were bowling variations out of the front of the hand. They were bowling googlies. They were shaking it up, not giving the Australian batsmen the opportunity to size them up and go big. And I think that's the difference, where South African, maybe not Indram Tahir because he's brilliant, but let's go with traditional South African and Australian spinners, and maybe New Zealand as well. Let's say all non-subcontinent teams, their spinners tend to become a bit one-dimensional once there isn't any assistance from the surface. But I suppose that comes from experience, and as a leg spinner myself, I can testify it's really difficult to develop such a skill set in a country where so much emphasis is placed on pace bowling because that's what the surfaces here ask for. But once again, Kuldeep and Chahal just showing us that even though they didn't take a lot of wickets in the start of their spells, they were like a boa constrictor around the Australian team. They were just starving the Australian batsmen of runs. Even, going at like 4 5s and over, but not giving away any boundaries, and then just pushing that run rate up, forcing them, like they did with David Warner, to take a risk and eventually getting him out.
That being said, India's fast bowlers, Jasprit Bumrah and Bhuvaneshwar Kumar specifically, were brilliant, each taking 3 wickets. And although their figures look modest in terms of their economies, after their opening spells, they were each going at 3 or 4 and over.
Yeah, great opening spells.
Yeah, which put a huge amount of pressure on the Australian batting lineup because they were always behind the rate from that point on.
Before we move on, David Warner's innings. He batted at a strike rate of 66. He scored 56 runs. So, a solid contribution, but he received a lot of criticism from especially commentators like Kumar Sangakkara for his slow innings, to be honest. That's not what you expect from David Warner. If David Warner gets to 50, he's going to do it at least a runner ball. I don't know whether the criticism was fair, but in the end, he seemed to have swallowed up quite a lot of balls and put the rest of his team under quite a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I agree. If you look at the scorecard, and strike rate of 66 in a game where both teams scored over 300 doesn't seem good enough. But if you go back and look at how Shikhar Dhawan and Rohit Sharma started their innings, Rohit Sharma, to be fair, strike rate of 81 is much better than 66, but also a 50-something of 70 balls. Not that much faster. And I think David Warner, he gets out at this point and he looks stupid. If he had gone on and been able to accelerate, then maybe he would have looked much better. And I feel that he was maybe playing the long game in that you can't chase 300 and something if you don't have wickets in hand. And I think he was valuing his wicket more than he was going after the runs.
But I think it's got a lot to do with the evolution of cricket over the last couple of years. The traditional approach would be you get to 50 of your 80 balls and then sort of try and accelerate. But these days, it's expected of the modern player to sort of go at a runner ball at least. If you take a look at how Virat Kohli, Steve Smith in this very game approached their innings, they were going at a runner ball basically from the start. Now, yes, they weren't facing the new ball with Jasprit Bumrah and Kumar swinging it and moving it off the deck and all that. But at the end of the day, it is expected of the modern player to rotate the strike constantly and keep up with that rate. I think all the criticism probably rooted in a bit of disappointment more than anything else. And also a bit of, I think that people were a bit underwhelmed because David Warner, you don't pick David Warner to score at a strike rate of 66. You pick Usman Khawaja to do that. No offense, Usman. But that's sort of not his role in the Australian team.
Yeah, I think the other encouraging thing for Australia is now their lower orders performed. Stephen Smith seems to be in great form.
Yeah.
If their openers can start firing and they can get an innings out of Maxwell or Stoinis, they can chase down just about anything. And their bowling's looking good with the exception of Zampa. So I think things are looking really good for Australia. I can't see them not making the playoffs.
No, they should definitely make the playoffs. And then on to the game, which happened today, South Africa versus West Indies.
Or the lack of a game.
The lack of a game.
Obviously a bit of a poor start for South Africa.
Yes, if you've told me before the game that it would have rained out, I would have been really disappointed saying, it was an opportunity for 2 points for South Africa and get their campaign up and running. But after that start, 29 for 2 after 7.3, and the batsman not really looking at home, South Africa may be lucky to get 1 point.
Yeah, sad to say that we're glad to be on the board, I suppose. But it would be good for South Africa to just play the game. For someone in the batting lineup to hit some form, for the bowlers to run in and have a go. I think at this point in the competition, as much as there might be some disappointment and there is still some pressure because we can make the semi-finals, I think there's sort of a relief about it that they can now just go in and do their best and they're going to need some luck at this point. So they're going to have to go for it and give their best, and whatever happens, happens. The damage is already done.
And talking about luck, if we take a look at what's coming up this week in the World Cup, it seems like a lot of rain. So it's not the end of the road for the Proteas yet, even though we've only got this 1 point. If a couple of key matches rain out, we might just make it.
Yeah, I think we don't expect England to have a problem qualifying. We don't expect
India
to have a problem qualifying. But we hope that we can upset someone like New Zealand or Australia, and then have a few rained out games. And then we can definitely see ourselves in a semi-final spot, especially with the rain giving a helping hand. We've just it's got to give us the right helping hand. It doesn't help our game against Afghanistan gets rained out.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, it's not over until the fat lady sings.
And cricket is a statistically dense sport.
I think that's it from us for this week. Thanks for joining us.
Give us a like on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever platform you prefer.
Give us a follow or a subscribe on Spotify or Apple.
If it's the first time you're listening to an episode, go back and listen to our previous episodes. Please tell people about the podcast. Word of mouth is still a great way to get the word out
and
there.
If there are any topics which you'd like us to discuss or touch on, please don't shy away from contacting us. You can contact us on all of our social media pages. Anyway, thanks for joining us on this episode. We hope you have a wonderful week watching the cricket.
Keep well now. Goodbye.